You're listening to Sharky on sharkgoeschomp. 7 true stories from Reddit that hint at the existence of alternate realities. A Vanishing Road, submitted by Padjo95. About 4 years ago, I lived in this fairly small fly speck of a town. At the time, I had lived there for about 12 years, so I knew my way around everywhere. Our house was about a mile and a half from the nearest neighborhood. Our mom intentionally picked that house due to the lack of neighbors. It was tucked away on a back road with the woods surrounding it. Every now and again, I liked to take walks with my little brother, who at the time was about 13, and we decided to do just that. We headed up the road and decided to try to find a new path, or a new clearing that we hadn't discovered yet, when we noticed something a little shocking. Just off the road that led almost directly to the neighborhood, there was a brand new paved road. Every road in that part of town was a gravel road, so seeing an out-of-place paved road was pretty unusual. We stared at it for a while, then came to the conclusion that it must have been made within the last few days, due to the modern but slow growth of the town. However, we had no explanation for how they did it so fast. Well, we decided to explore it a bit. I remember as soon as we set foot on the road, the air became notably colder by at least 5 degrees. The road itself was black pavement, but no dividing lines. It was surrounded by some thick red trees that resembled redwoods, but they were too short and non-native to our state, southern Arkansas. We walked on the road for about 3 miles until we decided to head back due to it getting dark. When we got off the road, we felt the temperature go back up. My brother and I agreed to explore it the next day. At roughly noon the following day, we set back out to explore this place, only to discover that the entire road was now missing. Now, when I say missing, I mean the trees that were cleared to make it had apparently grown back, with no sign of the redwood-like trees. We even began to explore the woods once more, but only to find no sign that it ever existed. When we asked our parents about it, they said they knew nothing about the new road or road work being done near us. The Doppelganger by PlzProbeMe. I used to work at a dog rescue in the Midwest before moving home to the East Coast. It was a small rescue, about 10 employees max, and we were all tight-knit. Nobody there resembled me. I am exceptionally short and have different hair than anyone else there, so it wasn't easy to mistake someone else for me, or vice versa. Now, this place was also haunted. We all heard a female voice yelling at us, or singing near us when we were completely alone. Almost everyone saw apparitions or reflections when nobody was there, so this place was already full of some weird energy to begin with. But then it got weirder. During my last couple of months, coworkers started sending me odd texts. They would text me on my days off asking why I was there and where I had just disappeared to. I would always reply that I wasn't there. While I was there, occasionally someone would jump at the side of me and say something like, "What the hell? You were just outside. I saw you through the window." Or, "I just saw you in storage room. How did you get here so fast?" They couldn't understand how I gotten from point A to point B impossibly fast. Every time, I would be baffled and explain that I wasn't where they thought I was before. A good example that I remember well was this one. I was in the backyard. The only door in from there goes through the main adoption room, then exits on the other end about 50 feet away into a hallway containing a kitchen and some private meeting rooms. I walked in from outside and saw my coworker coming into the room from the hallway. Now she looked at me and gasped, then opened the door behind her to the hallway. She explained that she had just seen me in the kitchen doing dishes, but when she opened the door, which lay about 6 feet beyond the kitchen door, there I was coming in from outside. It was actually impossible. This is when we started to understand that something very strange was going on. We all sat around and talked about it, and it turned out almost everyone was seeing a phantom version of me. Every time they saw it, it was turned around and didn't interact with them. It would go into some strange places too. For example, someone watched the me go into the closet holding the water tank and followed me, asking some questions about work matters. As soon as they turned into the closet, I was gone. I hadn't walked into that closet at all around the time, let alone on that day. My best guess is that I was in the middle of making a major life decision about either staying in the city at this job and taking a promotion or coming back home to the East Coast. The decision was extremely stressful for me to make, as I really love that job. I'm surmising that my energy literally just split somehow, and that a version of me was hanging around there while I endured so much angst over staying or leaving. If I want to get super weird about it, I could say that maybe in some another reality, I decided to stay there, and maybe those two timelines were intersecting and glitching onto one another. They continued to see the me after I moved home, thousands of miles away. My Friend the Time Traveler. Submitted by thius. Now this happened when I was around 16 years old. I was a fairly normal kid, spent a bit too much time on the computer though, so I did make a lot of friends with both nerdy kids and popper kids. It all starts when I met this nerdy kid who I'll call Gavin for the sake of the story. Gavin and I started becoming decent friends because of our interests in WoW, World of Warcraft. Gavin was a really socially awkward guy in real life, although he's a cool dude to talk to online. He's also a genius who has an IQ of around 180 as far as I remember. I did the same test he did in school, and I got a 103, so it's the real deal. Gavin and I came to each other's houses a lot after we became good friends. We would chill play on WoW, watch videos on YouTube, play chess. He was a pretty cool guy, and soon enough he was one of my best friends. One day, I decided to come over to his house uninvited. Might be a dick move on my part, but I was a teenager at the time, and I just thought that we were really good friends, so it was cool. So I knocked on his door, and this older looking guy opened, around 40. He had a little bit of gray hair and a beard. Now, at first I assumed this was Gavin's dad because they looked eerily similar, but then I remember that Gavin doesn't have a dad. I then assumed he was a relative. I asked him if Gavin was home. He laughed and told me that he's Gavin. I found this a bit weird, but it could be a coincidence, or Gavin was simply named by his uncle. I told him that I'm looking for a 16-year-old Gavin, described him to the guy, and he started looking uneasy. After some hesitations, he said Gavin was not home. I asked him when he was going to be home. Didn't really go into questioning who he was, and he gave me a time after thinking for a few seconds. So then I came over at the given time, and my friend 16-year-old Gavin opened the door. I told him that his relative was there. He told me that he has no relative with the same name as him, and he also told me that he was home at the time I came and met the 40-year-old. We both found this extremely weird, and our only explanation is time travel. I still keep in touch with Gavin, who happens to be studying quantum mechanics at the time, and we still haven't told anyone this story. The Car. Submitted by NinexTime. So I've never discussed this with anyone other than my sister and a friend of mine, but around the age of 11, my family decided to go and visit my grandparents, and while we were there, I decided to go out and play around for a bit. Now they lived in a flat in the middle of the city. They had a road that had stores and then a car park on the right side that had enough space for me to play around with my friends that lived there. As I got down and ran to that car park, a car went past that nearly crashed into me. In that car, there were 3 passengers, a woman, her daughter, and a male driver. As I dodged that car, they looked like they had no emotions whatsoever. and looked really dull as I focused into the car. The male driver was my dad, very easily distinctive. And the car was our car. Same color, same car plates, and everything. As I was there in shock, I instantly ran up to our car, thinking it was stolen, but our car was right there. I turned around to follow the other car, and all I knew, the car was no longer there. Standing there in shock, I ran upstairs to my grandparents' house without knowing what to do or what to say. Luckily, my sister was right by the door. I'd told her the story and what I saw. At this moment of time, I didn't mention the part of our car still. And for all I know, she is laughing at me, and she told me that my dad hasn't even left the house yet. Ever since I tried to explain to myself what I saw, I was unable to express what my eyes saw, and finding out about this subreddit today, hopefully you guys can help me out. Quick notes about the passengers and my family. At the time of what happened, I was the youngest child of two. My sister was 5 years older than me. When my sister was born, she was told that she wasn't going to live past a week, and that my mom would never be able to have kids ever again. The passenger was a woman that slightly looked like my mom, but I was more shocked about the fact of seeing my dad with another woman in the car. P.S. We're now a family of 6, LOL. Deja Vu, submitted by Juliakek. So I discovered this subreddit yesterday, and after reading many stories here, I remembered some weird shit that happened to me a few months ago. When I wake up, the first thing I do is get on my computer, and so I did that one morning. I decided I'd check my subscription feed on YouTube, and the first video that showed up was just some mundane storytime type of video. Unfortunately, I don't remember what it was or who the author was anymore. I don't usually watch this type of stuff, but for some odd reason, I had an urge to check it out. So I clicked on it and see what it was. I watched a few seconds of the video, unamused, and then suddenly I got a huge feeling of deja vu. I felt like I've watched this video before. But the weirdest thing is that I started reciting it. I knew every word said in the video. Why the fuck would I know it? I don't remember things so clearly when I have deja vu. I freaked out because watching this video before was impossible. As it was uploaded 20 minutes before I watched it, I even checked it to see if it was some sort of re-upload or remake, but it wasn't. I didn't look any further into it at the time because my dad had a car accident just a short while after it happened. I forgot about this entire incident afterwards. But the glitch in the Matrix made me remember. I know it's small and insignificant compared to other stories here, but it creeps me the fuck out when I think about it now. I probably have more stories like this, but usually I just blame it on my brain for making me see things. Do you have any clue on what this thing could be? The Man, submitted by Jimisol. The story from my perspective. While at a festival, a man walked up to me and stared me dead in the eyes. His irises were so dark that it was impossible for me to distinguish his pupils. And he spoke. "What was that? Do you see it?" I suddenly saw a bright array of colors surrounding him, much like what I thought to be an aura. "Can you hear it?" The aura faded away, and I heard a bunch of high-pitched harmonic hums resembling an assemble of singing bowls. "Perhaps you can smell it." The sound was no longer present, but I smelled an indescribable fragrance. It's a little bit of a stretch to say it resembled lavender. "Or can you taste it?" I experienced a taste in my mouth, similar to that of a cough drop. My mind was blown. From what I experienced, this man was playing with my senses simply by looking at me and speaking. It was as if he had special consciousness, related powers. I asked him his name, and he said, "I have no name." And he walked away, and I never saw him again. Possible explanations. Skepticism. It was my third day at the festival. I was sleep deprived and a little dehydrated, which could have induced a mild delirium. That, on top of my active search for anomalous phenomena, I was simply exhibiting a strong form of confirmation bias that altered my perception. Objectively, this man just said a bunch of nonsense that happened to mix strangely with my state of mind at the time. Idealism, my experience was as real as it gets. The man was a guru of some sort, or perhaps an extraterrestrial, or maybe a very experienced hypnotist. He uses consciousness as a gateway to a realm of reality unknown to the orthodox perspective. To fully understand what happened, a radical worldview change must come forth. Now, my conclusion. The data fits both explanations, so which is the true one, I don't know, but I assure you, the raw experience was real. Judging by experience alone, someone was playing with my senses. Discussing whether or not it actually happened calls into question the concept of objectivity and the validity of the intuitive and subjective as means of investigating reality. So yes, someone played my senses to me. What that means, whether that counts as real, is up to an individual's ideological framework. The Girl Who Dreams, submitted by Belthazare. It all started around the time that I had just gotten into high school, so around the time I was about 12 to 13, I guess. It was register period on the first day, back after school holidays, second semester for anyone who was curious. We all wait for our names to be read and each of us reply. The teacher reads out a name, and nobody answers. Out of nowhere, I get this feeling like somebody just ripped my stomach out and replaced it with ice cubes. I find it odd, but I can't shake the feeling. Anyway, about 5 minutes later, another student enters the class, and my jaw almost drops. Except for having red hair, she could have been my twin otherwise. The teacher sits her near me, and I can't stop staring. She notices me and looks just as astonished. We begin a conversation, but the uneasy feeling stays with me. About 10 minutes later, the principal walks into the classroom, and I freeze and clutch the desk. Here it comes. The teacher notices and walks over to the principal. They lean in together, and he whispers something to her. She nods, and he steps forward, facing the class. I'm sorry, class, but Miss X, girl not presented at the register that morning, had passed away over the holidays. She committed suicide. I tuned out the rest of what was said and just started crying uncontrollably, and that set off the rest of the class. Now the dreams. The dreams started after this. I cannot say why, as I don't know. To go into each and every specific dream would be insanity, and it was all very detailed. Let's just say, when people I have contact with, no matter how briefly in life or about to die, I dreamed their deaths about 3 days beforehand. I will simply state that it is not possible to be mere coincidences based on how many people's deaths I have dreamt. Now the list. 2 colleagues I have worked with, 3 grandparents, 1 great-grandfather, 1 friend's grandfather, 2 school teachers, murder-suicide like my dream, 1 lady I met briefly for 5 minutes one day at work, at least 3 friends, all dead within 3 days of my dreams. Make of it what you will. This is Sharky with sharkgoeschomp. I hope that you enjoyed the story. Please subscribe for more stories, and please add any comments of weird glitches, dimensional travels, time travels, any stories that you would like to submit. Have a good night.